White woman throws hot coffee on a black girl mid-flight, and moments later her firefighter dad's bold move stops the entire aircraft. But what this wealthy passenger said right before she deliberately poured scalding liquid onto a 12-year-old's chest will make you realize that racism in 2026 isn't just alive, it's evolved into something more calculated and vicious than anything the civil rights era faced. "Look what you did, you made me spill on you. These people are so clumsy." Judith Crane's voice fills the cabin of Flight 1847 from Chicago to Nashville, her manicured hands still gripping the empty coffee cup she just deliberately emptied onto 12-year-old Keisha Benson's lap and chest, her face twisted with satisfaction disguised as outrage, performing victimhood while inflicting assault. The words hit Keisha like the coffee itself, burning in ways that go deeper than skin, the casual cruelty of these people echoing in her ears while hot liquid soaks through her favorite dress, the one she wore specially for Grandma Lorraine, the pain radiating from her chest where the coffee made contact, her hands shaking as she tries to process that an adult just hurt her on purpose and is blaming her for it. Here's what nobody wants to admit in America today. Racism didn't disappear when we integrated lunch counters and buses. It didn't vanish when we elected black officials and passed civil rights laws. It mutated into something more insidious that hides behind plausible deniability, and it was an accident and you're being too sensitive. And in some ways that makes it more dangerous than the open hatred of the 1960s, because now when black children are assaulted people can claim it wasn't intentional, wasn't about race, wasn't really that bad, even when 180 witnesses watched it happen and said nothing. Keisha isn't surprised by Judith's attack. She's shocked, yes, because you're never quite prepared for physical violence from a stranger on an airplane. But surprised? No, this is her reality as a black child in America, the teacher who gave her C's on essays that deserved A's, the store security guard who followed her through aisles assuming she was stealing, the woman at church who told her she was too dark to play the angel in the Christmas pageant. Each time the same message delivered with a smile: "You don't belong here, you're less than us, we can hurt you and get away with it." Raymond Benson sits frozen for exactly 3 seconds, his firefighter brain assessing his daughter's injuries, the redness spreading across her skin, the tears in her eyes, the wet clothing clinging to her small frame. Then something shifts in his expression from shock to cold fury as he realizes this woman just assaulted his child and is trying to make it look like an accident. Keisha looks up at her father, her voice small and breaking. "Daddy, it burns, she hurts me. Why did she do that?" The question hangs in the air, simple and devastating, a 12-year-old asking why an adult would deliberately harm her, asking for logic and hatred, asking her protector to make sense of senseless cruelty. Raymond stands to his full 6'3" height, his Chicago Fire Department hoodie suddenly looking less like casual wear and more like a uniform of authority, his voice trained to command burning buildings and save lives filling the cabin with unmistakable power. If you believe no child should be assaulted on an airplane while passengers record instead of intervene, keep watching. If you think racism on flights is something we left in the past, you need to see what happens when a firefighter dad uses his authority to ground an entire aircraft for child abuse. And if you've ever been hurt by someone who then blamed you for their violence, drop a comment below and tell us your story. We're reading every single one. Tell us where you're watching from and what time it is right now. This story doesn't end the way you think. Hit that like button if you stand against racism and child abuse, and subscribe to this channel because we're exposing the discrimination that still thrives at 30,000 feet. Raymond pulls out his badge, his paramedic certification, his phone, and the look on his face promises that Judith Crane's calculated cruelty is about to cost her more than she ever imagined, that this father isn't backing down, that this flight isn't going anywhere until his daughter gets justice. The flight attendants rush toward row 14, passengers crane their necks to see, phones continue recording, and Judith sits there smirking like she's already won, completely unaware that she just assaulted the daughter of a man who has the legal authority and professional credentials to turn her petty racism into federal charges. But to understand how a 12-year-old girl ended up with hot coffee poured on her chest while her firefighter father watched in horror, you need to know who Keisha and Raymond Benson really are, and more importantly you need to understand why this trip to Nashville means everything to a family that's learned to navigate racism with dignity even when dignity doesn't protect you from deliberate cruelty. Keisha Benson is 12 years old, 7th grade at King Middle School in Chicago, honor student who loves singing in the church choir and baking with her grandmother's recipes, dreams of becoming a pastry chef who opens a bakery in her neighborhood where everyone feels welcome. She's polite beyond her years, raised by a father who taught her that excellence and kindness are her best defenses against a world that will judge her harshly, that being twice as good isn't fair but it's reality, that she represents not just herself but generations who fought for her right to exist with dignity. She's responsible and careful, organized in ways that make adults trust her with important tasks, the kind of child who color codes her homework folders and never forgets to call when she arrives somewhere, who takes pride in being reliable because she knows black children don't get the benefit of doubt that white children receive automatically. This trip to Nashville is for Grandma Lorraine, who's 78 and recovering from a stroke that left her weak but determined, who raised Raymond as a single mother after his father died in Vietnam before Raymond was born, who worked 3 jobs to put Raymond through school and never complained about the sacrifices, who asked specifically to see Keisha, saying, "I need to see my baby girl while I still can." Keisha has been preparing for weeks, made a photo album by hand with pictures from every family gathering, wrote out Grandma Lorraine's famous peach cobbler recipe in her best handwriting so Grandma could keep it by her bed, recorded herself singing "His Eye is on the Sparrow" because it's Grandma's favorite hymn, and hearing Keisha's voice might bring comfort when the stroke recovery gets hard. Raymond Benson is Battalion Chief with the Chicago Fire Department, 22 years of service running into burning buildings and pulling people from wreckage, trained in emergency medicine and crisis management, decorated for bravery more times than he can count. He's a single father. Keisha's mother died from complications during childbirth, leaving Raymond to raise their daughter alone with help from Grandma Lorraine, who moved to Chicago for 2 years to care for infant Keisha while Raymond worked. Their bond is built on loss and love intertwined, Raymond teaching Keisha that her mother would be proud of the young woman she's becoming, Keisha reminding Raymond that they're a team even when the team feels too small. They have Sunday waffle traditions where they cook together and talk about everything, Wednesday game nights where they play cards Grandma Lorraine taught them, bedtime conversations where Raymond answers Keisha's questions about racism and injustice with honesty that hurts but prepares. When Grandma Lorraine had the stroke 3 weeks ago, Raymond flew to Nashville immediately, stayed for 5 days making sure she had the best care, promised he'd bring Keisha soon because Grandma kept asking for her granddaughter, kept saying she needed to see Keisha's smile and hear her voice. That morning they woke early, Keisha double-checking her carefully packed gifts, Raymond still wearing his Chicago Fire Department hoodie from the overnight shift he just finished, both of them tired but excited, talking about how surprised Grandma would be to see how tall Keisha has gotten, how proud she'd be of Keisha's grades and her solo in the church Christmas concert. The drive to O'Hare Airport was filled with easy conversation, Raymond reminding Keisha that Grandma might seem different after the stroke, that her words might be slower and her movement limited, that the important thing is just being there and showing love. Keisha nodded seriously, promised she'd be patient and helpful, asked if she could read to Grandma from the poetry book they both love. Check-in went smoothly, the gate agent friendly and efficient, commenting on Keisha's photo album peeking from her backpack and saying what a thoughtful granddaughter she must be. Security was routine, TSA agents professional, one asking about Raymond's CFD hoodie and thanking him for his service to the community. The gate area was typical Sunday morning chaos, families heading to destinations for holidays and reunions, business travelers absorbed in laptops, college students with oversized headphones and textbooks. Raymond and Keisha found seats near the window, watched planes take off while they waited, Raymond pointing out the different aircraft types because Keisha loves learning how things work. Boarding began and they walked down the jetway together, Raymond's hand protective on Keisha's shoulder, found their seats in row 14, Keisha by the window so she could watch clouds, Raymond on the aisle in case Keisha needed anything, the middle seat between them empty when they first settled in. The plane was older but well-maintained, seats showing wear but comfortable enough, overhead bins already stuffed with other passengers' luggage. Around them the usual mix of travelers, a businessman in 15C ignoring everyone, a young family in row 12 with toddlers and tablets, college kids scattered throughout with headphones blocking the world. The flight attendants were kind, a young woman named Ashley checking their row and asking if they needed anything, smiling warmly when Raymond explained they were visiting his mother in the hospital, offering extra snacks for Keisha with genuine friendliness. Then Judith Crane boarded, 63 years old in expensive clothes that screamed old money, designer bag, jewelry that cost more than most people's monthly rent, her bearing suggesting someone accustomed to deference and special treatment. She checked her boarding pass, looked at row 14, saw the empty middle seat between Raymond and Keisha, and her entire expression soured like she just discovered something offensive. There must be some mistake. Her voice carried entitlement and disgust. I'm platinum elite. I shouldn't be squeezed between, she paused, her eyes scanning Raymond and Keisha with unconcealed contempt. These people. 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign turns off and passengers settle into the familiar rhythm of cruising altitude, the initial tension of takeoff fading as people pull out books and tablets and headphones, creating their own private bubbles of entertainment and distraction at 30,000 feet. Keisha carefully pulls out her photo album from her backpack, the one she spent weeks making for Grandma Lorraine, opens it gently to review the pages one more time, making sure everything is perfect, that the photos are secure, that her handwritten captions are neat and readable. Judith glances over from the middle seat, her eyes scanning Keisha's careful work with unconcealed disdain. What's that, some kind of craft project? Her voice drips condescension. How quaint, how very elementary school of you. Keisha looks up, tries to stay polite despite the mockery in Judith's tone. It's for my grandma, ma'am, she's been sick, I made it to cheer her up. Judith makes a dismissive sound in her throat, turns away like Keisha's explanation isn't worth acknowledging, like the love and effort in that album mean nothing because they come from a black child Judith has already decided doesn't deserve respect. Keisha puts the album away, hurt but trying not to show it, pulls out her tablet instead, puts on her headphones, starts watching one of her favorite shows, the one about the girl who solves mysteries and stands up to bullies, loses herself in a story where good people win and mean people learn lessons. Could you turn that down? Judith's voice cuts through Keisha's show. Some of us have refined sensibilities, we don't appreciate that kind of noise pollution. Keisha pulls off one headphone, confused. Ma'am, I'm wearing headphones, there's no sound coming out. Raymond leans forward slightly, his voice measured and calm. Ma'am, my daughter is wearing headphones, there's literally no sound for you to hear, she's not disturbing anyone. While the light from the screen is disruptive, Judith shifts her complaint without missing a beat. It's too bright, it's bothering my eyes, she needs to turn it off or at least dim it significantly. She has every right to use her tablet, Raymond says, his voice still controlled but with an edge underneath. Just like you have the right to read your magazine, she has the right to watch her show. That's how airplanes work. Judith turns to the passenger across the aisle, a white woman in her 50s who's been pretending not to notice the escalating tension, makes sure her voice carries loud enough for multiple rows to hear. Can you believe this? I pay platinum prices and they seat me with people who probably used miles or vouchers to get here. It's not fair to paying customers like us who actually contribute to the airline's bottom line. The woman looks away uncomfortably, pretends sudden fascination with the safety card in the seat pocket, choosing silence over confrontation, choosing comfort over courage. Ma'am, I paid full price for both our tickets. Raymond's voice remains even despite the insult. Cash, not miles, not vouchers. And even if I had used miles, we'd have the exact same right to be here. Your ticket doesn't entitle you to harass other passengers. Full price? Judith's laugh is ugly, mocking. Doing what kind of work exactly? She lets the question hang with all its racist implications. The assumption that a black man couldn't possibly afford airline tickets through legitimate employment, that his presence in this seat must involve some kind of fraud or assistance. I'm a battalion chief with the Chicago Fire Department, Raymond says clearly, his pride in his work evident despite his controlled tone. 22 years of service, I run into burning buildings and save lives, that's the kind of work I do. Sure you are, Judith's voice mocks him openly. And I'm the Queen of England, next you'll tell me you're a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist. You people always have such creative stories. She pulls out her phone, starts typing with exaggerated movements, reading aloud as she composes her message. Stuck between thugs on this flight, this is what happens when airlines prioritize diversity over quality. When will someone stand up for paying customers who deserve better than this? Keisha's eyes fill with tears she's desperately trying to hold back, her hands trembling slightly as she grips her tablet, trying to focus on her show but the words barely registering because Judith's hatred is so loud it drowns out everything else. Raymond puts his hand over Keisha's, squeezes gently, leans close to whisper. Don't let her steal your joy, baby. Don't give her that power. She's just a miserable person trying to make us miserable too, but we're better than that. But Daddy, why does she hate us? Keisha's voice comes out small and breaking. We didn't do anything to her, we're just sitting here. Why is she being so mean? Because some people carry hate in their hearts, sweetheart, Raymond says quietly. It's not about you, it's not about anything you did, it's about her own ugliness, and that's her burden to carry, not yours. Judith overhears this, her face showing satisfaction rather than shame, like confirming their distress was her goal all along, like causing pain to a 12-year-old child is somehow victory rather than cruelty. Other passengers notice, some looking sympathetic, others looking annoyed that there's drama disrupting their flight, but nobody speaks up, nobody tells Judith she's out of line, nobody offers support to the father trying to protect his daughter's spirit from assault, bystanders all choosing the safety of silence. A businessman in 15C glances over, sees Keisha's tears, looks away quickly, returns to his spreadsheets, prioritizes his work over a child's welfare, another witness who will claim later he didn't want to get involved. The white woman across the aisle who Judith tried to enlist as an ally keeps her eyes down, guilt written on her face but not enough guilt to transform into action, not enough discomfort to risk confrontation with an aggressive racist stranger. 20 minutes of harassment, 20 minutes of microaggressions designed to remind Raymond and Keisha that some white people still believe they don't belong in shared spaces, still believe their blackness makes them lesser, still believe cruelty toward black children is acceptable if you dress it in concern about standards and quality. And through it all, Keisha tries to be good, tries to be quiet, tries not to give Judith any excuse to escalate, carrying the burden that black children learn early, that your behavior has to be perfect because your skin already marks you as suspicious in eyes that refuse to see your humanity. The flight attendant Michelle appears with the beverage cart, her smile professional and warm, moving down the aisle offering drinks and snacks, unaware that she's about to witness an assault that will haunt her for years, that will change how she views passenger conflicts, that will teach her the hard lesson that silence enables violence. Keisha orders apple juice, her voice polite despite the emotional exhaustion of enduring Judith's harassment, still trying to be the good child her father raised, still believing that politeness might somehow shield her from more cruelty. Raymond orders water, his eyes constantly checking on Keisha, his protective instincts on high alert, sensing that Judith's escalating hostility is building toward something worse but hoping he's wrong, hoping this woman has some limit to her hatred. Judith orders coffee with a sneer in her voice. Make sure it's hot, I like my coffee actually hot, not the lukewarm garbage you people usually serve, I want it steaming or don't bother bringing it. Michelle's smile tightens slightly but she nods, retrieves a fresh cup from the beverage station, pours coffee that's hot but not scalding, the temperature airlines serve to prevent exactly the kind of burns that are about to happen, puts a lid on the cup to prevent spills. She places Keisha's apple juice on her tray table, Raymond's water on his, Judith's coffee on hers, moves on to the next row, completely unaware that behind her a woman is calculating cruelty, is looking for an opportunity to punish a child for the crime of existing while black. Keisha reaches across slightly to adjust her seatbelt, the buckle has twisted and is digging into her hip, an uncomfortable pressure she's been trying to ignore but finally needs to fix, her elbow extending just barely into the space between her seat and Judith's. Her elbow brushes Judith's tray table, the gentlest contact imaginable, the table doesn't even move, the coffee cup with its secure lid sits completely undisturbed, not a drop spills, not even a wobble. Just the slightest touch that in any normal interaction would go unnoticed or be met with a polite "excuse me." Watch it, Judith's voice is sharp, accusatory. You almost made me spill, these people have no spatial awareness, no consideration for others. I'm sorry ma'am, Keisha says immediately, her reflex to apologize even when she's done nothing wrong. I was just fixing my seatbelt, I didn't mean to bump anything. But Judith sees an opportunity, sees a chance to teach this child a lesson, sees a way to punish this black girl who dared to sit next to her, who dared to exist in space Judith believes belongs to white people, who represents everything Judith hates about a changing world she can't control. A calculating look crosses Judith's face, cold and deliberate, the expression of someone making a conscious choice to inflict harm, to cross a line from verbal abuse to physical assault, to hurt a child in a way that will leave marks. She reaches for her coffee cup with her right hand, her movements precise and intentional, removes the lid with her left hand, the steam rising from liquid that's hot enough to burn, hot enough to cause pain, hot enough to scar if applied long enough. Raymond sees it happening, his firefighter instincts screaming danger, reaches to stop her but he's too far, the aisle seat too distant from the window, his protective hand can't reach fast enough. Judith tilts the cup and pours, deliberately aims the stream of hot coffee directly onto Keisha's lap and chest, the liquid soaking through her favorite dress, the one she wore for Grandma Lorraine, spreading across her stomach and thighs, burning skin that's never experienced deliberate violence. Keisha screams, pure shock and pain combined, the sound that comes from a child who trusted the world to be safe and just discovered it isn't, who believed adults would protect her and learned some adults choose to harm instead. Look what you did, Judith's voice rises immediately, performing outrage, creating a false narrative before anyone can process what really happened. You bumped my arm and made me spill, these people are so clumsy, so careless, now look at the mess. She's lying, she did it on purpose, Keisha sobs, trying to wipe coffee from her clothes with shaking hands. She took the lid off and poured it on me, Daddy, she hurt me on purpose? Raymond moves instantly into emergency response mode, pulls napkins from the seat pocket, assesses his daughter's injuries with trained eyes, lifts her shirt just enough to see the redness spreading across her skin, first-degree burns forming, minor compared to what he's seen in his career but devastating because it's his child, because it was preventable, because it was deliberate. Baby, let me see, where does it hurt the most? His voice stays calm for her sake even though rage is building in his chest. Show Daddy where it burns. My legs, my stomach, Keisha's crying makes her words come out broken. It's hot, it hurts. Why did she do that? I didn't do anything wrong. Raymond examines the burns, his paramedic training cataloging severity, depth, coverage, determines she needs medical attention but isn't in immediate danger. The burns are painful but treatable, but the trauma of deliberate assault by an adult will require different healing. Other passengers turn to look, drawn by Keisha's scream, see a crying child with wet clothes and reddening skin, see her father tending to her with professional efficiency, see Judith sitting there with an empty coffee cup and a satisfied smirk. The businessman in 15C pulls out his phone, starts recording, finally finding the courage to act now that the violence is done, documenting evidence instead of preventing harm, another bystander who will carry guilt about the timing of his intervention. If you've ever watched someone hurt a child and told yourself it wasn't your business, if you've ever witnessed cruelty and stayed silent because intervening felt risky, this moment should change you. Keisha screamed in pain while passengers who could have stopped Judith earlier just watched and recorded. Subscribe if you believe protecting children matters more than avoiding confrontation. Like this video if you understand that bystanders who do nothing enable the harm they witness. Because what Raymond does next will show you that sometimes a father's authority can ground an entire aircraft when his daughter's safety is threatened. The white woman across the aisle finally speaks, her voice tentative and too late. I saw what happened. She poured that coffee deliberately. That wasn't an accident. You're damn right it wasn't an accident. Raymond stands to his full height, his 6'3" frame filling the aisle, his voice trained to command burning buildings and emergency scenes projecting across the entire cabin. That woman just deliberately assaulted my 12-year-old daughter. Everyone on this aircraft needs to understand what just happened here. Passengers go quiet, all eyes turning to row 14, phones coming out to record, the moment transforming from private conflict to public incident. Witnesses multiplying as Raymond's authority fills the space. Michelle, the flight attendant, rushes back, her face showing alarm. Sir, what's happening? Is everyone okay? No, everyone is not okay. Raymond's voice is controlled fury. That passenger in 14B just poured hot coffee on my daughter intentionally. My daughter has burns. This is assault and battery on a minor, and I'm declaring a medical emergency. Judith's smirk falters slightly but doesn't disappear. Her confidence in her own immunity still intact, Still believing her platinum status and white privilege will protect her from consequences, still not understanding that she just assaulted the daughter of a man with the credentials and authority to stop this flight. Raymond pulls his CFD badge from his wallet, holds it high enough for everyone in the surrounding rows to see, the gold shield catching the cabin lights, the authority it represents undeniable and official, 22 years of public service condensed into metal and leather that commands respect. Everyone on this aircraft listen carefully. His voice projects with the clarity and power developed from years shouting orders over roaring flames and collapsing structures. I am Battalion Chief Raymond Benson, Chicago Fire Department, badge number 2847, certified paramedic and first responder. What you just witnessed was deliberate assault and battery on my 12-year-old daughter. The entire cabin goes silent, conversations stopping mid-sentence, passengers turning in their seats, the atmosphere shifting from routine flight to crisis as Raymond's authority fills every inch of available space. Judith's performance continues, her voice rising to match his volume. He's lying, everyone saw what happened, the child bumped my arm and made me spill, it was an accident, now he's trying to turn it into something it wasn't. Ma'am, I watched you remove the lid from your cup, Raymond's voice stays measured despite the fury underneath. I watched you deliberately pour hot coffee directly onto my daughter's lap and chest. This was not an accident, this was intentional assault, and I'm not the only witness. The passenger in 13C, a white man in his 40s wearing business casual, stands up holding his phone. I saw it too, his voice is clear and firm. She removed the lid and poured it on the girl deliberately. I have it on video if anyone needs proof. The black woman in 15A stands as well, her phone also out. I recorded the whole thing, she says with quiet authority. That woman assaulted that baby on purpose, then tried to blame her for it. I got every second on camera. You can't record me without my consent, Judith's voice goes shrill. That's illegal, you're violating my privacy, delete those videos immediately. You're on an aircraft engaging in criminal behavior, the woman in 15A responds. There's no expectation of privacy when you're committing assault in front of 180 witnesses. Raymond kneels beside Keisha again, his voice dropping to tender concern. Baby, I need to check your burns one more time. Can you lift your shirt just a little for daddy? Keisha nods through tears, lifts the hem of her dress enough for Raymond to see the spreading redness across her stomach and upper thighs, the skin hot to touch, first-degree burns that will heal but hurt terribly right now, evidence of violence inflicted by an adult who should have known better. Michelle returns with the first aid kit, her hands shaking slightly. Sir, what do you need? How can I help? Cool compresses, Raymond says without looking up from examining his daughter. And I need to speak to the captain immediately. This is a medical emergency that requires law enforcement intervention upon landing. Sir, is your daughter seriously injured? Michelle asks, her training telling her to assess severity. Do we need to divert to the nearest airport? She has first-degree burns covering approximately 5% of her body surface area. Raymond's paramedic voice is clinical and precise. Painful but not life-threatening. However, she was intentionally assaulted by an adult passenger, which makes this a criminal matter requiring immediate law enforcement response. He stands again, his full height and presence commanding attention. I am a mandated reporter under Illinois law. When I witness child abuse, I am legally required to report it, and what just occurred constitutes assault on a minor. This aircraft needs to land and the perpetrator needs to be removed and arrested. You can't ground a plane because of spilled coffee. Judith's voice tries for dismissive but lands on nervous. Don't be ridiculous, you're overreacting because you want a lawsuit. This is typical behavior from people like you. People like me? Raymond's voice goes dangerously quiet. You mean fathers protecting their children? Or do you mean something else, something about the color of my skin that makes you think I don't have the authority to stop this flight? Judith goes quiet, realizing perhaps for the first time that her racism might actually have consequences, that this black man she dismissed and insulted has power she didn't anticipate. Michelle patches Raymond through to the cockpit on the cabin phone, her face showing she knows this is serious. That protocol requires captain notification for any assault allegation. This is Captain Rodriguez. The voice comes through professional and alert. What's the situation back there? Captain, this is Battalion Chief Raymond Benson, Chicago Fire Department, Raymond identifies himself with full credentials. A passenger in seat 14B deliberately poured hot coffee on my 12-year-old daughter, causing first-degree burns. This was witnessed by multiple passengers and captured on video. I'm declaring this a medical emergency and requesting immediate law enforcement intervention upon landing. Chief Benson, can you assess your daughter's injuries for me? Rodriguez's voice is calm but concerned. Does she require immediate medical attention beyond what's available on board? I'm treating her burns with cool compresses from my medical kit, Raymond reports. No blistering present, pain is manageable. But Captain, this isn't just about the burns. This was a deliberate assault on a child by an adult passenger who's been verbally harassing us for the past 40 minutes. Understood, Chief, Rodriguez says. Can you hold for one moment while I contact air traffic control? The line goes quiet. Passengers watching Raymond with expressions ranging from sympathy to admiration, watching Keisha cry quietly while her father tends to her with the gentle efficiency of someone who's treated countless burn victims, watching Judith sit rigid and pale as the reality of her actions begins to penetrate. This is absurd, Judith tries again, her voice lacking its earlier confidence. It was an accident, he's overreacting, I'm the victim here, I've been harassed by these people the entire flight. The passenger with the video plays it back loud enough for nearby rows to hear, the audio crystal clear, Judith's deliberate movements unmistakable, her voice saying look what you did immediately after pouring, her guilt captured in high definition. Ma'am, that video shows exactly what you did, the man says firmly. There's no accident there, that's assault plain and simple. Rodriguez comes back on the line. Chief Benson, I've contacted Nashville approach. We're 35 minutes from landing, I'm requesting priority handling and airport police will meet us at the gate. The passenger in 14B will be detained upon arrival. Thank you, Captain, Raymond says, his voice carrying relief and vindication. My daughter and I will cooperate fully with law enforcement. Captain Rodriguez's voice comes over the PA system moments later, addressing the entire aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain. We've had an incident involving assault on a minor passenger. We will be landing in Nashville where law enforcement will board to address the situation. Please remain seated and cooperate with all crew instructions. The cabin erupts in murmurs, passengers turning to look at row 14, at Judith who's now standing and protesting, at Raymond who remains calm and protective, at Keisha who sits crying with burns on her skin and trauma in her heart. The remaining 35 minutes of flight feel like hours, the cabin filled with tension that's thick enough to touch, passengers stealing glances at row 14, at the crying child with burns on her skin, at the father tending to her with professional care, at the woman who caused it all sitting rigid and defensive. Raymond continues applying cool compresses to Keisha's burns, his movements gentle and practiced, speaking to her in low soothing tones that only she can hear, reassuring her that the pain will pass, that she did nothing wrong, that daddy's here and nobody's going to hurt her again. Does it still burn, baby? He asks quietly, checking the redness that's spreading across her stomach and thighs. Tell daddy if it gets worse, if you feel any blistering starting. It hurts less now. Keisha's voice is small and exhausted. But daddy, why did she hate us so much? What did we do to make her so angry? We didn't do anything, sweetheart, Raymond says, his heart breaking at the question. Some people just have hate in them. It's not about you, it's about her own ugliness, and now she's going to face consequences for what she did. Judith sits in the middle seat, her earlier confidence crumbling as the reality of her situation becomes clear, as she realizes that her platinum status won't protect her, that video evidence exists, that a man with federal first responder credentials just declared her actions criminal. This is all a misunderstanding. She tries one more time, her voice directed at Michelle who's standing nearby. I'm being railroaded here. That child caused the spill and now her father is using his position to intimidate me. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to remain quiet until we land, Michelle says with newfound firmness. Multiple passengers witnessed what happened. There's video evidence. You'll have an opportunity to give your statement to police. The white woman across the aisle who stayed silent during the harassment finally finds her voice. I should have said something earlier. She speaks to Raymond with guilt written on her face. I heard everything she said to you and your daughter. I knew it was wrong. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Raymond nods acknowledgement but doesn't absolve her. Doesn't make her feel better about her silence, lets her sit with the discomfort of knowing she could have intervened before violence occurred. The businessman in 13C approaches, shows Raymond his phone. I sent the video to myself and backed it up to cloud storage, he says. If you need it for pressing charges, I have a complete record, time-stamped and unedited. Thank you, Raymond says genuinely. I'll make sure the police get your contact information. We'll need all the witnesses we can get. Other passengers begin offering support. A young mother from row 16 brings extra napkins. An elderly couple offers words of encouragement. People who stayed silent during the harassment now finding courage after the assault. Their belated kindness appreciated but insufficient. The plane begins its descent into Nashville, the announcement reminding passengers to return seats to upright positions, to stow tray tables, to prepare for landing, the routine instructions jarring against the extraordinary circumstances of what just happened. Judith pulls out her phone, starts typing frantically, perhaps messaging her lawyer or her family, perhaps crafting a narrative that positions her as victim, but her hands shake and her face shows she knows the video evidence will contradict whatever story she tries to tell. Captain Rodriguez comes back on the PA as they approach the runway. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, we have law enforcement meeting this aircraft. All passengers will need to remain seated after landing until officers have boarded and addressed the situation. We appreciate your patience and cooperation. The landing is smooth despite the turbulence of emotion filling the cabin, wheels touching down with barely a bump. The aircraft taxiing toward the gate where justice waits in the form of airport police who've been briefed on the situation. As they pull up to the gate, Raymond can see through the window multiple police vehicles, officers standing ready, the machinery of law enforcement mobilizing to address an assault on a child, validation that his authority and credentials carried weight, that his daughter's pain mattered to someone besides him. The seatbelt sign turns off but nobody moves, passengers obeying the instruction to remain seated, watching as the jet bridge extends, as the cabin door opens, as 4 uniformed officers board with serious expressions and determined movements. Lead Officer Bennett, a black woman in her 40s with sergeant stripes, enters first, her eyes scanning the cabin until they land on Raymond still sitting protectively beside Keisha. Chief Benson, she asks, her voice carrying respect for his rank and credentials. That's me. Raymond stands, shows his badge again. That's my daughter Keisha, she's the victim, the perpetrator is in seat 14B. Bennett approaches, kneels beside Keisha with the gentleness of someone who understands childhood trauma. Hi sweetheart, I'm Sergeant Bennett, I'm here to help, can you tell me what happened? Keisha looks at her father who nods encouragement, then speaks through residual tears. That lady was mean to us the whole flight, she said we didn't belong here, she said my daddy was lying about his job. Then when I accidentally bumped her table, she took the lid off her coffee and poured it on me on purpose. It hurt really bad. Bennett examines the visible burns on Keisha's arms and the redness showing at the neckline of her dress. These are consistent with hot liquid burns, she says to her fellow officers. We're going to need medical to photograph these for evidence. She stands, turns to Raymond. Chief Benson, can you walk me through exactly what you witnessed? Raymond gives a detailed account, his training making him precise and factual, describing Judith's harassment, the beverage service, Keisha's accidental bump, Judith's deliberate removal of the lid, the pouring of coffee, Keisha's screams, his immediate medical assessment. I have multiple witnesses, Raymond adds. The passengers in 13C and 15A both recorded video. At least 8 others saw the entire incident. Bennett approaches Judith, who's still seated, her face showing she's finally understanding the severity of her situation. Ma'am, I need you to come with us. We have reports of assault on a minor. You'll need to give a statement. This is outrageous. Judith's voice tries for authority but comes out desperate. I'm the victim here. That child caused me to spill. I'm being persecuted because I'm white and they're playing the race card. Ma'am, we have video evidence. Bennett's voice is flat, unimpressed. You can explain your version to detectives. Right now you need to come with us. I will sue this airline, Judith stands shakily. I will sue him. I know lawyers. I have rights. You can't treat me like a criminal. Actually, ma'am, we can, Bennett says. Multiple witnesses and video evidence give us probable cause. You're being detained for assault and battery on a minor. You'll be processed and have opportunity to contact legal representation. Judith is escorted to the front of the aircraft by 2 officers, not handcuffed yet but clearly in custody, her designer bag clutched to her chest like a shield, her face a mixture of defiance and dawning panic as she realizes her platinum status means nothing to law enforcement. As she passes row 14 she stops, turns to look at Raymond and Keisha with venom still in her eyes. "You people always play the victim," she hisses. "This is exactly what's wrong with America. You cry racism every time someone holds you accountable." "Ma'am, keep moving," Officer Bennett's voice is firm. "You've said enough, anything else you say can and will be used against you." But Judith can't help herself, her racism too deeply rooted to stay quiet even in the face of arrest. "That child is fine, she's faking, you're all falling for their act, they're going to sue and get rich off this lie." Raymond stands to his full height, his voice calm but carrying absolute authority. "No ma'am, my daughter isn't faking burns you can see with your eyes. She's not faking the trauma of being assaulted by an adult who should have known better, and we are the victims because you chose violence over basic human decency." The officers escort Judith off the plane, her protests fading as they move through the jet bridge, leaving behind a cabin full of passengers who witnessed everything, who will carry this story with them, who will have to reckon with their own silence during the harassment that preceded the assault. The entire cabin erupts in spontaneous applause as Judith disappears from view, passengers clapping for Raymond's courage, for Keisha's resilience, for justice finally arriving even if it came too late to prevent harm. Raymond sits back down, puts his arm around Keisha, lets her lean against him while they wait for medical personnel to arrive. His protective presence the only shield she has against a world that just taught her a brutal lesson about hatred. Paramedics board minutes later, led by a woman named Simmons who carries a medical kit and a tablet for documentation, who approaches Keisha with the practiced gentleness of someone who treats traumatized children regularly. "Hi honey, I'm Sarah. I'm a paramedic. Your daddy told us you got burned. Can I take a look and make sure you're okay?" Keisha nods, too exhausted for words, lets Sarah examine her burns with gloved hands, wincing when the examination touches tender skin but staying brave because her father is right there watching. First-degree burns affecting approximately 5% body surface area, Sarah documents while photographing the injuries. Anterior abdomen and bilateral anterior thighs, erythema present, no blistering. Patient reports pain level 6 out of 10, burns consistent with hot liquid contact. She applies a specialized burn gel that soothes immediately, Keisha's face showing relief as the cooling sensation replaces burning pain. "We're going to transport you to Vanderbilt Medical Center for full evaluation and additional documentation," Sarah explains. "Your dad can ride with us in the ambulance." Raymond gathers their belongings, helps Keisha stand carefully, supports her as they walk through the jet bridge where other passengers are now being allowed to deplane, many of them stopping to offer words of support, to say they're sorry this happened, to promise they'll be witnesses if needed. Michelle, the flight attendant, approaches with tears in her eyes. "Chief Benson, I am so deeply sorry this happened on our aircraft," she says, her voice breaking. "I should have intervened sooner. I should have stopped her harassment before it escalated to violence." "You did what you could," Raymond says with more grace than she probably deserves. "The airline needs better protocols for handling harassment, needs to empower crew to remove abusive passengers before they become violent, but that's not your personal failure." Still, she says, wiping her eyes. "That baby shouldn't have been hurt. No child should experience what she experienced. We failed her." In the airport terminal, Judith sits in an interrogation room with Detective Marcus Williams, a veteran investigator who's seen plenty of assault cases but finds himself particularly disgusted by this one, by an adult deliberately harming a child then trying to claim victimhood. "Walk me through what happened, ma'am," Williams says, his voice neutral but his eyes hard. "Tell me your version of events." Judith sticks to her story, the one she's been crafting since the coffee poured. "It was an accident. The child bumped my arm violently, the coffee spilled, I didn't pour it deliberately, they're lying because they want to sue, they're playing the race card." Williams pulls out his tablet, opens the video from the passenger in 13C, turns it so Judith can see. "Ma'am, this video shows you removing the lid from your cup," he says. "It shows you tilting the cup deliberately, it shows coffee pouring in a controlled stream onto the child's lap. Explain to me how that's an accident." Judith watches herself on screen, sees the evidence that contradicts every word of her defense, her face going pale as she realizes lying won't work when video exists. I was frustrated. She tries a different approach. She'd been annoying me all flight, bumping into me, being loud. I just wanted her to learn a lesson about being more careful. So you admit you poured the coffee on purpose, William says, his voice showing he's got her. You're saying you deliberately poured hot coffee on a 12-year-old child to teach her a lesson? Is that your statement? Judith realizes her mistake too late, backtracks desperately. No, I mean, it wasn't that deliberate. I didn't think it would burn her. Ma'am, hot coffee burns, William says flatly. That's not a surprise. That's physics. You intentionally poured a hot liquid on a child knowing it would cause pain. That's assault and battery. That's what we're charging you with. At Vanderbilt Medical Center, Dr. Amelia Chin examines Keisha in a pediatric emergency room bay, documenting injuries with photographs and measurements, her medical report creating permanent evidence of what Judith did. The burns are healing already with proper treatment, Dr. Chin tells Raymond. No scarring expected. She'll have some discomfort for a few days, but physically she'll recover fully. But Raymond knows physical recovery is only part of the equation. What about emotionally? What kind of trauma does something like this cause? How do I help her process being deliberately hurt by an adult? Dr. Chen's expression turns somber. That's going to take time and probably therapy. She was assaulted for no reason, learned that adults can be cruel, had her sense of safety violated. Those are wounds that don't heal with burn gel. A hospital social worker named Patricia arrives, sits with Keisha while Raymond steps aside to make phone calls, helps Keisha tell her story one more time for official documentation, asks the hard questions about what Judith said, what Judith did, how it made Keisha feel. Why did she hate me? Keisha asks, the question she keeps returning to. I was nice to her. I apologized when I bumped her table. I didn't do anything mean, so why did she want to hurt me? Patricia, the social worker, has heard this question from traumatized children hundreds of times, but it never gets easier to answer, never stops breaking her heart to see a child trying to make sense of senseless hatred, trying to find logic in cruelty that has no logic beyond bigotry. Sweetheart, sometimes people carry hate in their hearts that has nothing to do with you, Patricia says gently. She didn't hate you because of anything you did, she hated you because of who you are, and that's wrong, that's on her, not on you. But I can't change who I am, Keisha's voice breaks. I can't change being black. So does that mean people like her will always hate me, will always hurt me? No, baby. Patricia takes Keisha's hand carefully. Most people aren't like her. Most people see a smart, beautiful girl when they look at you. She's broken inside and she took that brokenness out on you, but you get to decide if you let her poison your view of the world. Raymond returns from making calls, his face showing the exhaustion of the past few hours. The toll of staying strong for his daughter while his own heart breaks watching her process trauma she shouldn't have to carry. I called your school, told them you won't be back until next week, he says to Keisha. And I called Grandma Lorraine, told her what happened. She's waiting to see you as soon as the doctors clear you to leave. Is Grandma mad at me? Keisha asks, worried somehow that being assaulted makes her a burden. Is she disappointed we're late? Baby girl, Grandma's not mad at you, Raymond says firmly. She's mad at the woman who hurt you. She wants to hold you and make sure you're okay. Nobody in our family is disappointed in you for being a victim of someone else's hatred. Dr. Chin completes her examination, documents burns as first degree covering approximately 5% of body surface area on anterior abdomen and bilateral anterior thighs. Notes erythema without blistering, prescribes topical antibiotic cream and pain medication, clears Keisha for discharge with instructions to follow up if any signs of infection develop. The physical injuries will heal quickly, Dr. Chin tells Raymond privately. But I'm recommending trauma counseling. Assault by an adult creates psychological wounds that need professional treatment, especially for a child who's trying to make sense of why someone would deliberately hurt her. Back at the airport police station, Judith sits in a holding cell waiting for her bond hearing, her expensive clothes rumpled, her makeup smeared, her platinum elite status meaning nothing behind bars, finally understanding that consequences exist even for wealthy white women who assault black children. Detective Williams files formal charges, assault and battery on a minor, reckless endangerment, the paperwork creating an official record that will follow Judith forever, that will show up in background checks, that will mark her as someone who hurt a child. The passenger videos circulate rapidly, uploaded to social media by multiple witnesses, the footage spreading across Twitter and TikTok and Instagram with captions like "White woman deliberately pours hot coffee on black child and watch entitled racist assault 12-year-old then play victim," the court of public opinion rendering its verdict long before any judge will. 8 million views in the first 24 hours, the video going viral with a speed that only genuine outrage generates, people sharing it with fury and disgust, tagging airlines and advocacy groups, demanding justice, making Judith's face recognizable to millions. News outlets pick up the story by evening, local Nashville stations first, then regional networks, then national coverage, the footage too clear and the crime too shocking to ignore, reporters calling the airline for comment, calling Raymond for interviews, calling legal experts to explain the charges. Within 48 hours, someone identifies Judith through social media sleuthing, discovers she works for an exclusive real estate firm in Chicago specializing in luxury properties, her company website showing her smiling face under the title Senior Sales Associate, her professional life about to collide with her personal hatred. Her employer Graham and Associates Luxury Real Estate sees the video, recognizes their employee assaulting a child, makes the business calculation that keeping Judith costs more than firing her, issues a statement within hours. "We are horrified by the actions of former employee Judith Crane," the statement reads. "Her behavior does not reflect our company values. She has been terminated effective immediately. We extend our deepest apologies to the victim and her family." Judith's bond hearing happens 36 hours after her arrest. The judge, a stern black woman named Angela Thompson, who's heard every excuse for bad behavior and isn't impressed by Judith's tears or her lawyer's explanations. "Your Honor, my client is a respected businesswoman with no prior criminal record," Judith's attorney argues. "She made a terrible mistake in a moment of frustration. She's willing to apologize and make restitution." "A mistake," Judge Thompson's voice is cold. "She removed the lid from a hot beverage and poured it on a child's body. That requires multiple deliberate actions. That's not a mistake, that's assault." She sets bond at $15,000, adds conditions that Judith must have no contact with the victim or her family, must surrender her passport, must attend anger management classes, the restrictions adding weight to charges that could result in jail time. Judith posts bond through a bondsman, walks out of jail to find reporters waiting, cameras filming, her face about to become synonymous with racist violence, her life transforming from comfortable privilege to public shame. "No comment," she says repeatedly, hiding her face, rushing to a waiting car, but the damage is done, her image captured, her crime documented, her reputation destroyed by her own deliberate cruelty. Raymond and Keisha finally arrive at Grandma Lorraine's rehabilitation facility that evening, exhausted and traumatized, walking into a room where a 78-year-old woman waits with tears in her eyes and arms open wide. "Come here, baby girl." Grandma Lorraine's voice is weak from the stroke but strong with love. "Let Grandma see you. Let me hold my grandbaby." Keisha goes to her, carefully mindful of Grandma's fragility, lets herself be enfolded in arms that have comforted 3 generations, lets herself cry against a shoulder that's weathered decades of racism and hatred, lets herself be reminded that love exists to counter the hate. "I'm so sorry this happened to you, baby." Grandma Lorraine strokes Keisha's hair. "I'm sorry the world is still so cruel to black children. I'm sorry that woman hurt you. But baby, listen to me. You're going to survive this. You're going to be stronger. You're a Benson, and we don't let hate break us." Raymond watches his mother and daughter hold each other, sees 3 generations connected by love and scarred by racism, feels the weight of trying to protect his child in a world that still sees her skin before her humanity. "Did you bring the photo album?" Grandma asks. "The one you made for me?" Keisha nods, pulls it carefully from her backpack. The pages slightly crumpled from the ordeal, but the love in every photo and caption still clear. "Then we're going to look at this together," Grandma says firmly. "We're going to remember good things. We're going to focus on family and love. We're not going to let that hateful woman steal our joy." 6 months later, the criminal trial begins, Judith standing before Judge Marcus Hayes in a Nashville courtroom, her expensive legal team flanking her, their strategy built on minimizing and deflecting, on painting her as a frustrated passenger who made a poor choice under stress. The prosecution presents its case with devastating efficiency, playing the passenger videos on large screens where the jury can see every deliberate movement: Judith removing the lid, tilting the cup, pouring coffee in a controlled stream while a child sits unsuspecting beside her. She removed the lid, prosecutor Sarah Mitchell says, walking the jury through frame-by-frame analysis. That's action 1, deliberate and intentional. She aimed the cup toward the child. That's action 2, she tilted and poured. That's action 3, these aren't the actions of an accident, these are the actions of assault. 8 witnesses testify, passengers who sat nearby, who heard Judith's harassment, who watched the assault happen, who saw Keisha scream in pain, their statements remarkably consistent, their credibility unshakable. Keisha testifies on the second day, 12 years old now but still visibly nervous, sitting in the witness box wearing a simple dress, her hands folded in her lap, her voice quiet but clear as she tells the jury what happened. She was mean from the start, Keisha says when asked about Judith's behavior. She said we didn't belong on the plane, she said my daddy was lying about his job, she made me feel like I was bad just for being there. And when she poured the coffee, what did you think? Mitchell asks gently. Did you understand what was happening? Keisha's eyes fill with tears at the memory. I thought I was being punished, I thought I did something really wrong to make a grown-up hurt me like that. I didn't understand that she just hated me for being black. The jury, 8 women and 4 men of mixed races, watches Keisha with visible emotion, several wiping their eyes. The image of a child trying to explain racism breaking through any skepticism Judith's lawyers tried to create. Raymond testifies about the burns he treated, his professional assessment given with the credibility of 22 years of emergency medicine, his father's pain visible beneath his controlled demeanor. I've treated hundreds of burn victims, he tells the jury. I know what accidental burns look like and what deliberate burns look like. What happened to my daughter was deliberate assault. No question in my professional opinion. The defense tries to paint Judith as overwhelmed, as someone who snapped under the pressure of cramped seating and perceived rudeness, their expert psychologist testifying about stress responses and impulse control failures. But Mitchell destroys this narrative on cross-examination. Doctor, if someone is so stressed they can't control pouring hot coffee on a child, why could they control removing the lid first? Why could they control aiming carefully? Why could they control their immediate claim that the child caused it? The psychologist has no good answer, admits under pressure that the deliberate nature of Judith's actions suggests premeditation, not impulse, that her immediate blame shifting suggests consciousness of guilt. The jury deliberates for exactly 2 hours, returns with a verdict that surprises no one who watched the trial. Guilty on all counts, assault and battery on a minor, reckless endangerment. The forewoman's voice firm as she reads each verdict, Judith's face crumbling as she realizes her freedom is ending. Judge Hayes sentences her 4 weeks later, his voice carrying the weight of moral judgment. Ms. Crane, you deliberately hurt a child because of racial prejudice, you caused physical pain and psychological trauma, you showed no remorse until facing consequences, 18 months in jail with 9 months suspended for good behavior, 3 years probation, $15,000 fine, mandatory anger management and racial sensitivity training, banned from commercial air travel for 5 years. Judith serves 9 months in county jail, her time marked by the complete dissolution of her previous life, her husband filing for divorce citing irreconcilable differences and public embarrassment, her friends abandoning her as association becomes toxic, her social status destroyed by her own hatred. Raymond files a civil lawsuit seeking $500,000 for medical expenses, pain and suffering, emotional distress, future therapy costs, the case settling for $350,000 that bankrupts Judith, forcing her to sell her house and liquidate her retirement savings. The airline settles separately for $200,000 to avoid trial, agreeing to implement new protocols for addressing passenger harassment, mandatory intervention training for flight attendants, zero-tolerance policies for racial abuse, systemic changes bought with Keisha's trauma. Judith is released from jail at 64, emerging into a world that knows her face and her crime, unemployable in her former field, reduced to part-time retail work that pays minimum wage, living in a small apartment that reflects her fallen status. She gives one interview 2 years after her release, sitting in her modest living room, her face showing the toll of consequences. I let prejudice control me, she tells the reporter. I hurt a child because I couldn't see past her skin color. I destroyed my own life. I deserve every consequence, but that doesn't undo what I did to that little girl. The interview generates limited sympathy, most comments on social media saying she got what she deserved, a few suggesting her punishment was too lenient, almost no one willing to forgive someone who deliberately burned a child. The first year after the assault is the hardest for Keisha, the physical burns healing within weeks but the psychological wounds running deeper than anyone anticipated, nightmares waking her several times a week, therapy sessions twice weekly with Dr. Maya Johnson who specializes in childhood trauma and racial stress. She dreams about the coffee pouring, about hands that hurt instead of help, about being trapped in a confined space with someone who hates her, the dreams always ending with her screaming for her father who can't reach her in time, trauma replaying itself in her unconscious mind. But slowly, with therapy and time and the unwavering love of her father and grandmother, Keisha begins to heal, begins to understand that Judith's hatred says nothing about her worth, that one person's cruelty doesn't define her value, that she has the right to exist in any space regardless of who disapproves. Grandma Lorraine becomes her anchor through recovery, the 78-year-old woman who survived segregation and Jim Crow, sharing stories about her own experiences with racism, teaching Keisha that survival is resistance, that joy in the face of hatred is victory. Baby, I've lived through worse than what you experienced, Grandma says during one of their talks. I've been called names, denied service, threatened with violence, but I'm still here, I'm still strong. I raised a son who saves lives and a granddaughter who's going to change the world. 1 year after the assault, Keisha writes an essay for her 8th grade English class titled The Day Hate Burned Me, pouring her experience and healing onto pages that win a national writing competition, her words reaching audiences far beyond her classroom. A woman poured hot coffee on me because of the color of my skin, the essay begins. She hurt my body, but my dad, a firefighter who saves people from burning buildings, saved me from burning hatred. He taught me that standing up to hate doesn't mean becoming hateful, it means demanding justice while keeping your own heart whole. The essay is published in major newspapers, shared across social media, taught in classrooms as an example of processing trauma through writing, Keisha's voice joining the chorus of Black children who've had to explain racism to adults who should already understand. Raymond uses the settlement money to establish the Keisha Benson Foundation, funding therapy for children who experience racial trauma, supporting families navigating the criminal justice system after hate crimes, turning his daughter's pain into resources for other victims. He also becomes an advocate for airline policy reform, working with the FAA and major carriers to implement zero-tolerance protocols for passenger harassment, mandatory intervention training for flight attendants, systems that empower crew to remove abusive passengers before violence occurs. Within 3 years, disability and discrimination-related incidents on flights drop 68%, physical assaults drop 82%, the data proving that accountability and training work better than hoping passengers will behave, that institutions have responsibility to protect vulnerable travelers. 5 years after the assault, Keisha is 17, a high school senior who's not just survived trauma but transformed it into purpose, who volunteers teaching conflict resolution to younger students, who speaks at conferences about resilience and healing, who's been accepted to Northwestern University where she plans to study social justice. She returns to Nashville to visit Grandma Lorraine, who's now 83 and thriving, this time flying without fear, boarding the plane with her head high, sitting in her assigned seat without apology, reclaiming space that someone once tried to tell her she didn't deserve. A flight attendant named Jennifer recognizes her from the viral video that's now 5 years old, approaches with respect and kindness. "You're Keisha Benson," she says softly. "Your story changed how we train, how we think about passenger protection. Thank you for your courage." "I didn't want to be brave," Keisha responds honestly. "I just wanted to visit my grandma, but if something good came from something bad, then I guess that matters. I guess pain can become purpose if you let it. If you believe one person's trauma should create change that protects the next person, if you think institutions have responsibility to prevent the harm they allow to happen, subscribe to this channel because we're showing you that individual courage combined with systemic accountability can transform entire industries." Like this video if you understand that Keisha's story isn't just about one assault but about how we treat vulnerable people in spaces where power is unequal, because every share spreads the message that protecting children and demanding justice aren't political positions, they're moral imperatives. The scars remain, invisible but real. Keisha still flinches sometimes when strangers get too close, still processes the world through the lens of someone who learned young that hatred exists and sometimes wears a pleasant face before showing its teeth. But she's learned something else too, learned it from her father who ran into danger to save strangers, from her grandmother who survived decades of discrimination with dignity intact, from her own journey through trauma to healing, that one person's hatred doesn't have to define your story, that you get to choose whether cruelty makes you bitter or better. At Northwestern, she studies criminal justice reform and restorative practices, focusing on how systems fail vulnerable people, on how to build accountability without losing humanity, her senior thesis examining airline policies before and after her assault, documenting the changes her case catalyzed. She graduates with honors, speaks at her commencement about turning pain into purpose, about how the worst day of her childhood became the foundation of her life's work, about how a woman who tried to teach her she didn't belong accidentally taught her that belonging is something you claim, not something others grant. Raymond sits in the audience in his dress fire department uniform, watching his daughter accept her diploma, remembering the 12-year-old who cried from burns and asked why someone hated her, seeing the young woman who turned that question into a career fighting injustice. Grandma Lorraine watches via video call from Nashville, 88 years old now and less mobile but sharp as ever, her voice breaking with pride as Keisha crosses the stage. "That's my baby girl," she says to the nurse beside her. "That's my grandbaby who took hate and made it into hope." And somewhere in a small apartment in Chicago, Judith Crane watches the same graduation on a news segment about the young woman whose assault conviction destroyed Judith's life 5 years ago, watches Keisha succeed and thrive and build meaning from trauma, and perhaps for the first time truly understands the full cost of the hatred she carried, not just what it cost her but what it could have cost Keisha if love hadn't been stronger than hate.